This was a hard video to make, because all the stages are so freaking amazing. How am I supposed to work on the script when I just want to play the game? Well, I managed to do it, and in a bit I'll go over every stage in Shadow Generations and rank them in a tier list. Let's get into it. Space Colony Ark Act 1. What an amazing first impression. I love how immediately there are a bunch of different routes. Your first time you get this long safe path to test out your boost on, but this would get boring on multiple playthroughs. So fuck that and take these rails instead. Some of you might have thought this was part of the background, but no, you can just about jump to it. Right after is this section with the anti-gravity walls, which are pretty cool. But if you jump off the edge here, you find the coolest secret path. It's just awesome how many routes there are to find, whether they're hidden in plain sight or they're not hidden in plain sight. But then we get introduced to the amazing chaos control ability, allowing you to stop time and stop objects in place, which creates faster routes. You can fill up the meter for it by defeating enemies or collecting these capsules, which they give you a bunch of here, so you can really test it out. What's interesting is that it also stops the in-game timer. So if you're like me and want to get the best time possible, you'll want to stop the time as much as you can during a stage. This makes it so you'll actually want to slow down and defeat enemies when you can. One part of the stage I find a little annoying is this rocket that launches at you. It's super cool for the first few times. On repeat playthroughs it gets a little annoying. I don't mind mashing the buttons, but it takes 10 seconds for the rocket to actually launch. It's okay though, because right after we go inside the Space Colony Ark, where it continues to be high quality, with fun little routes to traverse the level. But then it just hits you with this gigantic room. It makes you feel like a kid entering a giant playground. Which route are you going to take first? And how do you even get to some of them? I still have no clue which one is the fastest. Right after that we get to take a break from all the complicated movement we just had to do, because Black Doom teleports you to Radical Highway. This part is a lot simpler than the previous part, but hitting all the shortcuts is still satisfying. Only this section where you launch enemies at Doom's eyeball is a little awkward. It's hard to aim at the enemies when they're behind you, so it's difficult to do this part fast. Though overall still an amazing stage with great level design all throughout. I just have to put it in S tier. Space Colony Ark Act 2. We move on to the second act, which is fully 2D. And this is where I might get controversial. I find it really cool that there are fully 3D stages, but I preferred how there were 2D sections sprinkled here and there, like in Sonic Generations. It was a nice change of pace every once in a while. I do still think these 2D levels are cool though. They're just not as fun as the fully 3D stages, though the amazing controls of this game elevate them a lot as well. Platforming in 2D feels great. This stage features a lot of shortcuts still, some of which you can find by using chaos control. But it also introduces a few new mechanics, such as these switches that you can doom spear to open certain doors, as well as these spinners from Final Chase, and of course the doom wings, which allow you to take this different route in the stage. I also want to mention the dynamic camera. It makes it a lot more interesting to traverse this area. Overall, this level is kind of forgettable, but certainly still a worthy addition to the list of stages. B tier. Rail Canyon Act 1. Rail grinding is kinda boring. Okay, the stage is still cool, but its main gimmick is just kind of It's still fun to dodge obstacles by switching from rail to rail. It's just not as fun as moving around freely. That doesn't mean this level isn't great though. There are still cool shortcuts to take all over the place. I really like this one on the roof. I randomly noticed this trail of rings and I started wondering how to get there. It felt very rewarding when I figured that out. I also particularly liked seeing these rails being destroyed the first time I played the stage, and immediately knowing that chaos control would have stopped that from happening, creating an alternate route. Another thing I think is pretty cool is the Black Doom section in this one. Falling sideways caught me by surprise, as well as the level continuing after that part. Yeah, these levels are pretty long, which makes them feel like a whole adventure. Overall, I find the stage to be really enjoyable still. The only downside is that the rail grinding just overstays its welcome in a few parts. I'd give it an A tier. Rail Canyon Act 2. I love how much they designed this one around chaos control. You would think taking the highest route would be the fastest, but by now you should know that you need to kill enemies to fill up the chaos control gauge. And where are the enemies? On the lower routes. There are 2 of these green trails that skip huge sections, so getting them is essential for the best time. There are also some tight jumps which feel satisfying to pull off. Those things combined just make this a blast to speedrun. When you do it right, it's only 1.5 minutes long, but that's not a bad thing. As I mentioned earlier, I like the 2D more in small portions, so this level being a little shorter makes it more enjoyable to me. I'll give it a low A tier. Kingdom Valley Act 1. This level is insane. It feels like there are a million different routes. It introduces this stretchy rope mechanic that you can stomp on to get higher, which lets you access a lot of alternate routes. I was just playing the stage one time and I accidentally boosted off the edge, but then I saw this platform further away, so I said it and just checked it out, and it led me to the secret cave that skipped a huge chunk of the level. I was mind blown. This stage also introduces the Doom Blast, allowing you to launch enemies in any direction and then launch towards them. This opens up a lot of shortcuts as well and feels awesome to pull off. I haven't even talked about the surfing yet. I still have no clue what's the fastest route here. There are so many paths to choose from. I heard some people say this level lasts a little too long, but I think it has a good amount of variety, with it switching between on-land, surfing, and rail grinding. Or water grinding, I guess. This is definitely going in the highest of S tier. Kingdom Valley Act 2. The second act continues the quality with another amazing stage. The start of this one feels really fast because the camera is so zoomed in. It's really exhilarating. I also enjoyed going inside the castle. With these moving crushers, you really had to time your uses of the chaos control ability. There are a lot of places you can use the Doom Blast in the stage as well, which feel great to pull off. The level designers of this game really understand what makes the boost gameplay fun. Nothing in the stage feels awkward. It's perfectly designed around the controls and new abilities and fits it like peanut butter and jam on a sandwich. It makes the stage so fun to run through. I'm giving this one a high A tier. Okay, I know we all have our schedules filled with school or work and playing Shadow Generations, but if you just have 5 seconds left in there to fill in, could you consider hitting that subscribe button? For the remainder of this year, I'll be making tons of Shadow related content, and I bet you'll enjoy those since you've already made it this far into the video. So if you don't want to miss any of that, subscribe with the bell on. And now let's get back to the video. Sunset Heights Act 1. Something about the stage just really has me drawn to it. I first started following Sonic news in 2017 and saw all the hype around the next Sonic game, with this burning city in front and center of the marketing. I thought it looked so cool and I couldn't wait to run around in it, but when I could finally play it, I ended up being pretty disappointed. So bringing it back in Shadow Generations feels like an apology. It is pretty linear and more of a hallway, but it's still tons of fun to run through. This part where these robots throw debris at you and you can use chaos control to stop them and take as shortcuts is just brilliant. The Doom Blast is used greatly as well in the sewer section, allowing you to access this cool tunnel route, and just the overall design feels like so much of a step up from the original. Though what I really think draws me to the stage so much is its beautiful looks. I'm playing on the lowest settings and even then it still looks gorgeous. These colorful buildings being completely destroyed, with fire and smoke everywhere, almost looking like the city is being baked in an oven until its crust is perfect. I don't know why I'm doing so many food metaphors, I guess I'm just hungry. The Black Doom section of the stage probably has some of the coolest manipulations, with the buildings curving and forming a tunnel. Overall, I'd give this stage a high A tier. Sunset Heights Act 2. As if the previous stage didn't look gorgeous enough yet, this one has rain in it. The stage itself uses water more as well for the Doomsurf sections, though in 2D it doesn't really change up the gameplay that much, but it's still a cool switch up. These enemy trails from Sonic Forces return in this one as well, and using chaos control on them is pretty useful. I do think this stage is a little forgettable, but it's still really fun to speedrun. I'll put it in the lowest A tier. Chaos Island Act 1. We move on to a bit of an oddball. Chaos Island, a place Shadow had never been in any game, and the only reason it's included is because they could easily reuse assets from the previous game, Sonic Frontiers. That's not an issue at all though, because this level is amazing. In Sonic Frontiers, most of the platforms and objects felt kind of out of place, and it didn't feel like a realistic environment. But in this game it really feels like you're exploring this volcanic island. At first I didn't like the stage as much as the others because of its focus on the Doom lore. It's definitely the most difficult Doom power to get the hang of, but after a bit of practice, I love using it. It feels exhilarating to jump from surface to surface in this stage, and it's a great switch up of the gameplay. Of course, it opens up a lot of routes as well, which this level is full of once again. I still have to figure out how to access some of these places. I think this is another amazing level, just a little under Kingdom Valley, in the S tier. Chaos Island Act 2. Yeah, this is probably the worst stage in the game. Not that it's bad, no, not at all. Just compared to the other really great stages, I enjoyed this one the least. It's still fun to speedrun, but some of the obstacles are a little awkward to navigate. It's cool that they introduce a lot of new gimmicks throughout each stage, but in this stage some of them are kind of annoying. These rolling balls are okay, you just have to jump over them. But then there are these slow moving platforms. It goes down when you stand on it, and otherwise it goes up. Luckily, you can skip these sections for the most part, but it's a little difficult to do. There aren't many alternate routes, so there isn't as much room for creativity as usual besides in the way you take them. Aside from these rough parts, this level is still very enjoyable though, and has great moments. I'll give it a low B tier. Radical Highway Act 1. We arrive at the final zone, where the game allows you to fly anywhere you want. Tons of routes are built with Doom wings in mind, and they feel really cool. There is a ton of stage you'll miss by flying around, so playing with Doom wings versus without is a whole different experience. The difficulty is also amped up quite a bit in this stage, like how a lot of enemies require us to use the Doom spears for the electric stuff to go away. This middle section where you slide down the skyscrapers is also really cool, though I do think it gets a little repetitive on repeat playthroughs. Visually, it's fantastic though. It feels as if you're inside of Black Doom's mind, where he does whatever he wants to fuck with your brain. Overall, I'm giving this one a solid A tier. Radical Highway Act 2. Unlike every other Act 2 in this game, this one is in 3D for the entire duration, which I think makes it a more satisfying final level. Just like the last stage, Doom Wings off or on makes it completely different. These tornadoes get introduced, which make the flying sections much more difficult, alongside these enemies, which you basically have to spam attacks on. But when you defeat him, he leaves a small cocoon you can Doom Blast for shortcuts. This stage isn't really that difficult, but it definitely is the hardest stage in the game, with lots of obstacles and rotating roads. You're sometimes required to run on the side of them, but they are really fun and satisfying to overcome. This is another solid stage deserving of a high A tier. Wow, what an experience. Shadow Generations lived up to the hype in every aspect, including its fantastic stage design. I can't wait for the DLC to come out, which I'll definitely make a video about as well. But for now, I'm going to play more Shadow Generations, so I can gush about it even more in the next video. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought of the stages, and which ones you liked the most. While you're down there, don't forget the like button, it doesn't mind being hit every once in a while.